Yeah, my name is Thomas Thores Hyman. I'm a visual artist, primarily a painter, based in Berlin. Um, I'll give you a little bit about my background first. I grew up in the northeast of Scotland, in the countryside. I studied architecture, but sort of changed course after a couple of years. So initially to play music, I was playing in a couple of bands, songwriting and recording music. Around the same time, I also started a graphic design company. So my best friend and I started a t-shirt design company. She's now my fiance. We're not doing the t-shirts anymore, but we learned a lot doing that. And then I also around that time started doing some painting, creating album covers for my band and for my friends' bands. And I just happened to find out through a friend that the local university had a painting course, like an evening classes painting course. So I started going along to that, and this is a painting that I did after the first year there, which I consider quite pivotal because it really sort of something clicked in my head about realism that in school I hadn't appreciated painting at all, but this one, really working into the small details, I really decided, okay, this is for me. And yeah, you wouldn't want to know how many hours were spent trying to get those small details, but it's the craft. Then this was my first series that I showed in Aberdeen. This is just really like my first instinct to create something quite dreamlike, and I'm assembling elements that I just sort of intuitively put together. This one was actually quite pointedly symbolist, where I was trying to portray the individuals both through their physical likeness, but also to sort of say something about what they struggle with and how they deal with that. So yeah, you've got myself in the middle there, Amy on the right, and that's my brother on the left. But then after moving to Berlin, I sort of tried something completely different. I guess this was in the midst of like a lot of political madness, with the wake of Trump in full swing and Brexit. So I really felt like I wanted to make something with some social commentary. I now feel that this series has a little, I don't know, I feel it's kind of a mixed success because I feel the symbolism is a little heavy-handed, and it started to sort of disconnect from realism. I wasn't really using much reference to real life at this point. I was just sort of drawing it all from my head. So moving on from then, I sort of completely changed once again. I mean, I guess you could characterize a lot of this as really swinging from one thing to another in an attempt to try and sort of find my path. So I then went on to this collage series, which I was basically pulling together scraps of newspaper, magazine, things like that, sticking them on the page. And I kind of saw it a little bit like in the streets of Berlin, where you see pieces of graffiti, pieces of posters that have been half torn down. And it was kind of working quite intuitively. And I feel like what it did teach me was to appreciate accident in art. I feel like painters don't need to have an agenda for every single thing. I mean, maybe some do, but for me, I quite like having elements that I initially don't really know much about why they're there, and only later sort of discover something about it. But then, changing once again, during the pandemic, I guess sometimes when I think about the motivation for these paintings, I guess I was seeking something with a bit more calm, something that had a bit more control about it. And as my fiance there was reminding me before I left, I guess it was also to do with touch, because this is obviously a time when we weren't allowed to touch a lot of things. We had to be constantly cleaning our hands and such. So I feel like whilst it maybe was initially just an attempt to reconnect to realism, all those elements are present in those. So yeah, that was quite pivotal as well, because that moment I was like, no, I was on the right track to begin with realism. I do like some of the elements from the other projects, but this was really the moment where I sort of came back to it. Moving on from that, this was the culmination of that project, which is a really big painting. It's actually almost around that size of the projection, maybe a little bit smaller. And that was quite an undertaking, as you can imagine. I actually sort of lost faith in it about halfway through because I really was working so much into the details that I really couldn't see the end of it. I thought, I'm never going to finish this painting. So after giving it a couple of weeks, I came back to it, and eventually I was like, okay, I can finish this. But again, trying to draw a lesson from each thing, I think it kind of taught me, okay, you know, it's nice to work on a bigger scale and to really be diving into these details, but coming away from this, I feel like there was perhaps too much detail. I feel like I was being a little too precise, and this is not really exactly what I want to do. So moving on from that, so yeah, there were lots of these quick studies. This was an idea that I had in my head for quite a while, so I don't know if you've ever taken a panorama and there's been a figure who's moved and they get distorted like this. I really like this way of retaining the realist aspect of it, but, you know, doing something a little more interesting, breaking up. And if you can, some of the works you can see here, that's become like a sort of recurring motif in what I've been doing. Yeah, moving on from that, these are some more studies, working with different types of experimentation. So on the left-hand side there, we've got one with working with like a colder ground and trying to leave the brush strokes really visible. The central one is taking the surface and sort of splattering it with sort of random pieces of paint and allowing those to show through. The right-hand side, kind of experimenting with distortion and more extreme color and trying to add some sort of spontaneous marks. And this series remains actually some of my favorite stuff that I've done. It's still something that I struggle to retain in my finished work. I have a tendency to work a little too much into the details, and I really want to be able to have this sort of freshness with the brush strokes. Moving on from here. So, yeah, this is some more experimentation, maybe with a little more intention with the interventions, playing with depth and surface, and obviously colors, and really just kind of trying to seek a visual language that would make my work distinctive. So a couple of those you can see. There's two of them over there. Oh, three of them. Two of them? Three of them. So yeah, again, some more experimentation. This sort of technique, like the one in the middle there, you're seeing kind of like quite often if I have like an old palette with like some paint that's half dried up, I'll just sort of take what I have left over and just move it around the page just to kind of see what might suggest itself and then work from there. Quite often I have these things just sitting around for ages, and then when I think, okay, I'm going to paint a portrait, I'll just pull one out and be like, this is the one. And I quite like that sort of spontaneity. Also, the one on the right, I guess, kind of trying to decide details for backgrounds, how much is relevant, because it's really easy to just paint everything. And it makes much more sense to sort of leave some stuff, you know, it draws more attention into the portrait if you leave some stuff out. So this is the series that I showed earlier this year, one of the pieces over there, and I feel like in some ways this has kind of come full circle to my initial instinct. I feel like I perhaps, you know, I feel like I learned a lot on the way of those experimenting with those different things, but I now feel my initial instinct was right, and I'm now kind of going along this path, but trying to incorporate some of the things I picked up along the way. So this fragmented sort of thing, I see these compositions kind of like visual poetry in a way, if that's not too pretentious a way to describe it. I'm not necessarily thinking about super intentional symbolism for each thing. I kind of see it almost like writing a poem or a song where you just put things intuitively together that seem to make sense, and hopefully over time the meaning reveals itself. So and a lot of people have asked why I'm doing this sort of fragmented thing. And I mean, obviously, part of it is just exploring visual language and interest, but in each composition I see it as kind of suggesting something different. So sometimes that might be hesitation or ambivalence, or like a sort of masked emotion. But I also even like the sort of op art thing where it's kind of your eyes can't even really focus. Like the one on the left, to me, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of drunk looking at it or something like that. So that's something I'm interesting pursuing more. I'll show you a little bit of the process behind these. So this is the one that's on display over here, my friend Matt. So what I'm quite often doing is choosing obviously I've shot some pictures of him. I'm choosing the ones I like, cutting them up, sometimes quite intentionally, sometimes quite intuitively, and just putting them together into a composition that seems to make sense. And then the images, these are really just aggregating experiences over time. So sometimes they're quite old. They're usually from disparate locations. And to me, this is kind of the logic of dreams, where, you'll be in your bedroom and you go through the door. And of course, it's the swimming pool through there because, why not? But yeah, so this on the left is the canal in Neukölln when it was frozen over. And then on the right-hand side is a road in Scotland. This kind of sort of dramatic sky is another motif that I feel is something that's sort of beginning to present itself in my work as a recurring thing. This is a portrait of my brother. The photo on the left, as I said, some of them are quite old. This is a photo that I took 13 years ago, I think. And then on the right, it's a film image I shot about 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, I mean, I'm capturing these things not with a specific intention at the time. Sometimes I just think that there's some visual interest there, and then later on I like the way that it sort of just finds its way into the images without me sort of having to sort of intentionally direct it too much. This is the last one of that series. Yeah, same sort of thing. I think I've said everything I was going to say about this. Yeah, I'll just move on to the next one. These are some more things from this year. The one in the center, I actually started in 2021, and it was abandoned for a really long time. I think because I started it quite small, I thought this was the wrong scale to begin with this, but since it was the precursor to this whole series and contains a lot of the elements that, as I said, the dramatic skies, the geometries that don't really make any sense, and this kind of fractured thing, I thought this deserves to be finished. So yeah, and you can see it over there. The one on the right is combining these sort of collected images intuitively with the hands that I've been working on. So yeah, and the left-hand side one is a collaboration with my brother. It's for a gig poster. It was like a commission. So yeah, this is a series where we're having this green screen motif. This is one that I'm working on at the moment. It almost made it along to this exhibition, but I wasn't quite happy with it. But yeah, you can see what I'm doing now, kind of continuing along this line. References that I've shot myself, and then sort of intuitively creating compositions with marks and elements that I've just collected over time. What I really want to retain with this one, though, is to keep that kind of brushy thing that you saw in some of the other stuff. I really don't want to get to the same level of kind of finish as I have with the others. So that's basically what I wanted to finish on. That there's a painter that I really admire, Ruprecht von Kaufmann. He's German, and his work is so great. It just has this real dreamlike quality, but it's very free. The brushstrokes are so visible and lively. And also, I meant to say earlier on about Nicolas Uribe. He's also great for that sort of super accurate values, but it's a painting. It celebrates the fact that it's a painting and the paint is alive. So yeah, this is really what I'm trying to do now. I feel like I've kind of narrowed in a little bit on a path, but I'm trying to sort of balance this dynamism of paint, but to retain the accuracy which I was initially drawn to. So yeah, I just want to finish by saying thank you very much to Miltos and Veronica for organizing this, and thanks very much for listening. Any questions? Yeah.
It feels in some works, that it goes very experimental, and then I feel this way sometimes, like you go in a very chaotic things, you just put stuff and then you don't know if they should be there or not, but you go in this kind of state. It looks really nice, but do you feel it by yourself that you are in a way artistic confusion?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, I guess confusion is one way to characterize it, but I feel so I'm always drawing parallels between music and art creation, and I feel like for me there's a certain level of either confusion or just sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe I would prefer to have stuff not really figured out. Like, so for example, in a song, just getting some words down, this whole idea of not creating and editing at the same time, so sometimes it's just about coming up with ideas and only later going back to it and sort of saying, okay, this works, this doesn't work. So for me, I almost revel in it, the kind of just not knowing, because I feel like that's sometimes when something really interesting can happen, when it's something that you don't expect yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing your work. It's incredible. I was very moved by the Brexit series, and it's incredible. It has so many different stories in it. So, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Because it feels very personal for me as well, but it's just outstanding. And it feels like there's so many stories there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. I guess I should scroll back to that one before I talk about it. Yeah, so for me, maybe if I was to connect it more to the realism that I was drawn to begin with, then it would feel more authentic to me, I think. Yeah, I mean, really, I wanted each piece to kind of have a uniting sort of thing and then have several smaller narratives going on within it. So the central one is called Network Error, and it was kind of so I was working in a cafe at the time, which one of those ones where literally every table somebody's using a laptop, and I just thought it was a little sad because I mean, it's fine if people need places to work, but cafes are usually a place to come and connect with people, and I wanted to just have these people in the front, sort of a celebration of intimacy, whereas all the other people are kind of disconnected or hyper-connected perhaps. And then the stone bridge with the trolls underneath was supposed to just represent this I guess further disconnect caused by the toxicity online. On the right, quickly to go through it, yeah, I mean, perhaps this is one a little heavy-handed, but it's supposed to be the sort of Instagram grid on the top left there, the banal choice of identity, which one you're going to wear from like a prefabricated kit, and then obviously a little narcissism there, and then on the left hand side the boxing gloves are supposed to kind of represent the polarity of politics at the moment, with the whether that's Democrats, Republicans, or whatever, and then the swiping with the phone was supposed to be the sort of executions that were going on. Maybe got them from the orange suit, and then there was the yellow jacket protests, which I don't know if you can see, but there's supposed to be a screen, and they're supposed to be sort of marching into the screen to indicate that they, their protest has been sort of commodified or just turned into like sensational news. So yeah, that's sort of what I was trying to do. There was one other one there, but yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, so I really like the slides when you actually showed us how your work's coming to being, that you showed us your inspiration, how you work. So, and I just wondered, based on those images, have you ever thought of like not doing that as a painting, but, like for example, short video or using a different medium than painting or drawing?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I actually haven't thought too much about it. I mean, mostly just because for me, painting and drawing is the kind of main go-to. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say with the sort of aggregated images gathered over time, I have made a little music video, which I don't know when that'll be published, but I was working on that for a while, which was an idea I had, I don't know, like 10 plus years ago, where I was just sort of collecting these like really short, vertically shot videos that I thought, oh, that would make a cool little music video. So I guess that has some parallel to that. But in terms of actually creating literally videos of or other sort of things of those ideas, no, I hadn't really thought about it, but maybe that's something I'll explore in the future.
I saw some of your works on cardboard. I just wanted to ask if there was like an idea behind that as well.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, partly it was really just I had an excess of boxes and things that I just thought, I think it was after moving, I was just like, I feel like I should recycle these and make these into something rather than like, buying a load of materials. But also just really like some of the textures you can get from these things. Like some people might see it as kind of looking a bit scrappy, but like, I don't know, like those lines from the bent cardboard are kind of a mistake. But I actually feel like it adds something, The same with the sort of torn up edges and stuff. So yeah, I mean, really it was born out of almost necessity. But yeah, I actually do quite like it.